Hi, my name's Demara, and I'm going to be talking today about healing, actually being able to give healing to others. And this can be referred to as laying on of hands, is how I first learnt it. Although the interesting thing is, I never actually touched anyone, because not in the way of when I was channeling the healing energy. I would work about 2 or 3 inches away from the body. Others do touch more closely right on the physical body, but this is not something I felt I needed to do, and also that it was actually more powerful if I could feel the energy between me and the person, because I could actually feel it being transmitted. So it's an interesting subject, because many religions will tell you that we aren't allowed to do this. And I certainly had experiences myself when I was running a Centre for Intuitive Living, which included all the modalities, all the healing modalities like aromatherapy and body work on people. Even a chiropractor would come, which is more in the normal side of healing. I'm trying to think of the other things that we had there. Acupuncturists, I had a visiting acupuncturist, homeopath, all sorts of healing modalities. And also I was the in-house therapist and intuitive holistic coach. So what happened to me one day was, I'm trying to think, there were 2 events. One, as I was walking into my building, when I'd just gone out on a lunch break and happened to be coming back as somebody was standing outside deeming us, I'm trying to think what they called us, something pretty awful. It wasn't even heretics, it was something worse than that. Almost like when you commit treason if you say something against the royalty, but it was in the way of religion, and I can't remember exactly what it was now, but they were shouting out insults to the healing centre because they were a religious fanatic in some way. And because you're taught during even the Christian religion that this is done by prophets that come in who are totally special people, and you're not one of them. That's what we're actually taught, isn't it? And this is what was happening with this person on the steps of my building. He didn't come in, so that was good, because we would have had to have got him evicted. But I also had another event that happened to me, and I'm telling you this side of this before I get into how you can do this, so that you can get these right out of your head, and maybe get rid of some of the programming that you've had. Because this was from a Jehovah's Witness. I was living in a big farmhouse at the time, and they took some effort because they had to come up this road right up to the farmhouse in order to get to any civilization. And they did this just to come and preach on the doorstep. So I opened the door unbeknown as to who was there, and chatted politely with this person. But when they asked me what I did, and I said I ran a Centre for Intuitive Living and did healing and intuitive work with clients, they were absolutely beside themselves with anger. And this developed, it started with me being aware that they did not like what I was saying, and I was just answering questions at this point and getting into conversation with them, not understanding really what was going to occur. And then I could sense that there was more and more anger in this man's voice, and that he could hardly contain himself when he asked me what healing I did, and I actually said I did laying on of hands healing. You could see that to him that was a total sin. It was beyond sin, and he was getting in a rage. I almost felt like he was holding himself back from hitting me at the time. And this was horrendous, because this is like trying to take away another person's privilege to be on this planet with their own soul and their own views and their own truth. But this happens a lot. And how we avoid it is that we don't actually mix with the communities, do we? Not in general, and it may suddenly come upon us like it did with me. But I want people to be aware that there's nothing wrong with this. You are a unique sovereign being who came here to live out your soul's truth, and you have every right to act upon your own truths. And we know that there is one holy truth, and that is that we don't do anything that harms another. And certainly with healing, we're actually benefiting people. But when I was running healing workshops to help other people bring out their healing abilities and actually believe in themselves and know that they could do this, which was very simple to train people in these first initiations into it by just showing them what they could do and what they could pick up and how it benefited, because they were all working on other people in the room who could tell them that, oh yeah, I felt that. Yeah, this feels better now, that sort of thing. But whilst I was giving the discourse before I got them on the practicals of actually working with other people and trying this out, I would say to them that if you think about the Nazarene, I have always called Jesus the Nazarene because to me, I go by the historical story, okay? I'm not into putting this into a religion. I don't have a religious bone in my body. I don't follow other people's belief systems, which means I'm taking on their truth and trying to make it true for me. I go on practical experience, and my experience is that I actually remember a past life experience with the Essenes, who were this group on the Nile, who worked with all the spiritual truths that I still work with, actually, and that came through for me in this lifetime, which is meditation, living by not hurting others, and living by bringing in your highest energy and eating the highest vibration foods, and treating people in the right way. And this was the truth of the Essenes. So I kind of, I relate to the Nazarene who lived in Nazareth, who came through and worked and disciplined himself during his time with the Essenes on the college on the Nile. And all of the proof is there in the Dead Sea Scrolls about that, which you can read yourself. The ones that are out there, that is, because a lot of them have been taken by the Rothschild Institute? And it took them years and years to even give any of them back out. And various things have happened to the Dead Sea Scrolls so that people don't know the whole truth. And there's still more to uncover, I think, too. I think there's still more buried in the desert. But something I used to say was something I knew came from a quote. Now, this is not the actual quote. I used to give it in the way that I understood it. Everything I do, you can do and more. And that was because I wasn't a reader of the Bible, that was what I remember having read, and my understanding of what I read when others were talking about our right to heal, because it came from the Nazarene's mouth himself, the person who had reached this level and this stage of his own life, working with his higher self. But actually today, what I did before I came online, because I'm sure people are going to come on and comment about this, because they could be great believers in the actual words in the Bible. So I've got the actual quote from John in the Testaments of John. He that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do. Now, when you look at what people say about this, you know what this has been developed into is not just the honouring of a man called the Nazarene. This has been made into making Jesus something that you can never be. And the way they've done this is to use that first line, he that believeth on me. Well, all that in this old way of speaking, all that means to me is that that we believe he did it, that we believe that these stories have gone down in history and he was actually able to heal people and that he was actually able to do other things. And anybody who's, on a minor level, if you read my or look at my video playlist, you'll see a list where there's actually a video popped into that playlist, which is about metaphysical things that have happened to me. Because what we're talking about with the Nazarene is that he reached that level of high vibration and resonance and could metaphysically do things from that higher level of frequency. And this is an ability that anybody can do. And anybody who does one thing on this planet and you see that it is the truth, it is possible for another person to do it, because we all work within that same planetary rules of resonance, vibration, and physicality and spirituality. So this is the interesting thing. It's actually been changed around. I just wanted to get this out of the way, because I know some people will come onto this video and think that this is like, I think the word has just come back to me. I think they called me a heathen for running a centre which included healing. Laying on of hands, healing. That was the word. I was a heathen. And there will be other people who are still entrenched in mind control and conditioning from a child or from a religious education that will think that this is all wrong. So how do we do this? I mean, to me, it's all about offering yourself up as a channel. So if you were to begin in the classes that I used to run, we would talk about it and talk about energy and the frequency and all things like that. And then we would start to work on how do we do this? How do we go about beginning to do a session with somebody? And the way that I would do it is to talk first about how people need to have a still mind, and the best thing is that you start to meditate every day with just simple methods like 10 minutes putting your attention on your breath, which is getting you to master your monkey mind, which comes in with all sorts of thoughts and can intrude into what you're about to do. And what you want to do when you start a healing session is to be able to channel in and receive a higher energy. So the first thing I used to do, and I'm just going to try and do this show you this on this video if I can. Let me see if I can get my hands in front here. Okay, so what we would work with is I would get people to just put their hands out and then touch their hands together and then pull their hands apart and just hold their hands like this, maybe 4 or 5 inches apart, and to put their consciousness in between their hands and the air that's touching it. So be aware of the energy in that space. And you're putting your consciousness into the surface of your fingers in order to feel this. I mean, to me, it's a huge, important, healthy energy I've got in between my hands. I can feel it immediately. But if you've never done this, you may be not used to placing your consciousness where it wants to be and where you want it to be in order to start working with channeling this energy, which is coming in to your body and is now going to come out through your hands. And then we would work with bringing them closer and bringing them out, and then bringing them closer and bringing them out, and feeling that energy, being aware that there is something here. There is something that we exude. And this is shown in people's auric fields, and there are lots of people alive on this planet who see amazing colours and sometimes disruptions and sometimes incredible high energy in people's auric fields, and it's there. But this is about sensing it, so you can start to use that energy that is coming out of you and that is for you and a part of you, and you can channel this. And then we would get people to feel it as a ball. I'm hoping that you're seeing what my hands are doing. So now I'm I'm holding this energy in a ball and I'm moving it around, and it feels amazing. And it actually makes your body feel good too, because you're really getting in touch with the energy of you, not only in between your hands here, moving this ball, but you're getting in touch with the whole idea that you are this higher frequency. So that's the first part of it, okay? And then I've brought down, this is a teddy bear here. Isn't he sweet? He was given to me on my first birthday when I was in Mexico by my granddaughter, who was about 8 then, Rose. And Rose thought that Nanny wouldn't get enough cuddles while she was away in Mexico. So they sent me a huge bouquet of flowers with a teddy attached. So we've got Teddy here. Okay, so the next thing, I'm using Teddy's shoulders here. Whoops, I have to move it a bit. Okay, so the next thing I would ask people to do is stand behind their client who's sitting sideways on a chair, so that the back of the chair isn't an intrusion in between the client and the practitioner. And then they would go forward, and I would ask them to just tell the person that you were going to start the healing, and you were going to be placing your hands on their shoulders, and that after the end of the session, that you would be telling them that the session was coming to a close and you were removing your hands now. Because this is another important thing. This is Teddy's aura here, right? Around the body. And you don't want to do any fierce movements out of it, right? Because this is an energy field and you've made connection closely with that person. You have moved into that space. You know that space when you feel that a stranger has come too close and you know that you really want them to move back. And what you're doing is you're feeling them in your auric field. So here, we don't make violent, when we're doing healing sessions, we keep within the auric field. As I said, this is about as far away as I would be working. Okay, so the first movement the person makes is goes to the shoulders, and we just hold gently on points here. And your natural sense will tell you, because there are acupuncture points, pressure points on the shoulders here that are natural relaxation points. And so that's why we start there. So we do touch at that point. And we just have our fingers this side of the shoulders and this side, both sides, right? And then we start working. And we may just hold our hands here and see what we feel and see what messages come through. So that's a basic healing session. My sessions that I worked with, because I work with many, many clients in my practice with healing, and also at my center, we used to do a free Friday afternoon where people could just come in off the streets and just, sit down and wait for a practitioner to be free. And there would be 2 or 3 of us giving healing sessions. And what we're actually doing is we're actually putting energy in, or sensing energy. But the first thing you do is you stand there and put your hands on the shoulders. Is you just take 2 or 3 nice breaths, deep breaths out, and you relax yourself. You're also relaxing the person. And then you ask to be used as the highest channel with the highest energy that is appropriate to come through for the healing of this person. And it's very important not to ask for specifics. Like if you know that person's very tense, you don't have to ask for healing for tension. And also that you leave this freely open, even when you know a disorder or a state of dis-ease, which is a state of being uneasy. Any illness is that. There is something going on in that person that creates the space for the disease and the bacteria and the symptoms to grow. That is how it works. So sometimes we know the name of a disease and it could be cancer, Okay, so if you had a client who had cancer, you would not ask for healing for the cancer. You would ask for healing energy to be made available to come through you to this person, because it is not up to us to decide how that energy is going to work and what it's going to work on. And the interesting thing here is that if you really look into diseases, dis-ease, that state that we get into, has gone a long way into uneasy and dis-ease when we get cancer. And cancer is known in my world, which I've lived in for 45 years, is known to be a state where the person is not owning their own full power, and is in a state to allow parasitic growths, which is what cancer is. And it's really interesting, because if you get a person to begin working on themselves and becoming who they truly are more and not being a victim, you can, and I have seen this myself, and I know of many other practitioners who've seen people who get rid of the cancer. We're not going to go into the ins and outs of that too much today, but what we are talking about is that energy, that higher frequency coming in and being accepted by this client, our Teddy sitting here if it was alive, because you can certainly do this with animals. I've given healing to cats, was my thing. When I had cats, I was always giving them healing for when they were in discomfort or whatever. So what you're doing is you're channeling in a higher frequency that's coming into you. You are not using your own energy here. There is no feeling when you're doing this right. And I'll go a little more into what right is without the ego in a minute. But when you're doing this right, you never deplete yourself. You feel amazing after healing sessions. Even if you've done 2 or 3, you're at an exhibition, you're doing a demonstration or whatever, you have a never-ending source as long as you can keep opening up to channel this through your own energetic system. And in order to do that, you also need to be free of blocks like being too nervous or being too concerned about it. You won't be a good open channel. And trusting. This is another huge part of it. We trust when we're healers. We trust that that energy is coming through us and that it's going to do amazing things. And I'm going to quote an amazing healer, Matthew Manning, who I met a couple of times, and also read his book of how it all begun for him. And that's a really interesting story. Matthew Manning was from England and lived not far from where I lived. So I did go and see him doing demonstrations. And I remember somebody asking him, what makes a good healer? And I never forgot this, because he said, you heal at the level of what you believe you can heal. And that's just simple, isn't it? And it's great. It's amazing. It's always been amazing to me because I use that in many things. You know, I'm as good as I believe I can be good. It's me that blocks me on everything that I do. And this is what it's about with healing. If you believe you can heal, and for me, there's been a few experiences. I've had many, many experiences with incredible stories to tell on the healing that I was able to do with people. And it wasn't me doing it. I was the channel. I was the facilitator. And this is the bit about the ego that I was going to say. If you believe you are doing this and you are healing that person, right, and you get really into your ego, you're going to deplete yourself completely at the end of a session because you're actually trying to use your energy that's there for you. And your ego is also going to destroy any success you ever have. And some people get a bit into the duplicity of this. They have both. They're like a good channel, but they also really do the egotistical bit. And of course, we also have those healers, don't we? I mentioned this in a video yesterday, I think it was, when I talked about a session I had with a healer, a man who hadn't worked through all his own stuff. So he was chatting me up with his words as he healed, talking about my body, which was absolutely awful. And as soon as the session was over, I pulled him up on it. And like I said yesterday, he was so shocked because he'd been able to do this with so many women who were flattered by him bringing in lower sexual energies to the session. And I certainly was not up for that. And I think he changed completely after I said it, because he knew that, you know, I was probably on the same healing circuits as him, and I knew about him. And if anybody had ever have mentioned that he was doing anything like that again, I would have reported him. So we do get that, and we've had terrible cases of this where men have been sexually abusing women who had come for healing, and they may have even been doing that in the sessions, but they were certainly also doing it afterwards. So there's a real responsibility here for us to keep working on ourselves. I have another story that I could tell on that, actually. A healer that I was very closely associated with who told me what was happening to him, because he was not actually chatting the women up, but he was not using his full detached energy when he was in his room doing healing. And what happened was women were throwing themselves at him because this was subtle. This was a codependency that he had. And he did it by his actions towards them and the way that he treated them, which was over-friendly, which, as I said, was subtle, because he talked in depth to me about this. And also I had a couple of his clients talking to me about it. But one of these clients used to go to him regularly. And eventually she was slightly unstable anyway, and that's why she was going, had nervous problems. But she had put a lot of effort into taking him little gifts and working with this subtle, unnecessary energy that he was giving her. And what she did was she completely trashed his room. She caused hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of damage because he never went to the next level with her. She was expecting him to start being physical with her and go out with her, and he never did, because he was codependent in a way where he could work it, where it wasn't totally obvious. But there were many things that happened to this man. And when he seriously started asking me for help, you know, I said to him, you have to go back and do it, but do it in the right way and work on your own weaknesses. Not because he said, shall I stop seeing all these clients? And I said, no. That would be the worst thing you could do. You got to see these clients. And this was after one of the women, who happened to be a specifically large Italian woman, had thrown herself at him because she could feel all the vibes coming at her. And he was not serious about it. This was him just getting some satisfaction out of this sick way of working. So there's horrendous things you can get into here if you do not clean up your acts. And also do it with this consciousness of, I am here for the good. I am here because I want to be used as a channel for the highest frequency for me to help this person. And that's how it has to be. And there's a lot of work to get to that for some men, I have to say. I've not heard of women doing this, but I certainly heard of a lot of men. And I could tell you many, many. I'm not going to go into any more because it kind of sickens me to even think about it. But if anybody comes to you for help them with that if you are able, and tell them to work on themselves. So all of this energy what we're doing is we're sensing around the person, okay, and we're allowing the energy to come in and be whatever it needs to be. And I'm going to tell you about the first time I ever did a healing session with somebody was an elderly man who actually had cancer and was in the last stages of this. And I'm really grateful for this experience, because when you first start healing, you're really excited about what its possibilities are, because they are immense. The possibilities of healing and pulling in this and allowing this energy to come through you and then directing it for somebody else. It is incredible power. And I was really humbled when I knew the outcome of this, because this was a friend's father who had asked me to do healing for them. And I used to go to their house. Very difficult. This was, again, the other thing. It made me set boundaries for myself after this first experience with me being a laying on of hands healer, because I used to go to the house and it was quite a cluttered house anyway, but that would have worked. But what was also going on was he would not turn off the telly. So there was, you know how people in times gone by, I don't know whether it happens now because I don't go into that many people's houses with tellies blaring out, but tellies would go on while there were full conversations going on in a room and nobody would turn the television off. But this was happening during the healing session, and being my first experience at it, I didn't think I could ask for it to be turned off. So it put all sorts of things into my mind as to how I was going to run the next sessions. But anyway, we got it turned down. I remember that happening, where it was turned down very low, but he was still able to hear it a little bit because he still wanted to be watching the telly. And I did various sessions with him, and I felt it was really being received very well. And I did, I think, maybe 8 or 9 sessions with this man. And then afterwards, I think that was the end of what I was being asked to do. And later, I remember her coming to me and saying to me, listen, Dad passed over, but I want to tell you something. He received so much from the energy that was being channeled into him, because he found complete peace within himself with what was happening. And that was so amazing to hear, because when she said he'd passed over, I thought, oh God, I failed. You know, I was supposed to be this channel that could channel this through for healing. And she said to me, no, he was in his 80s. He had, it was very severe what was going on. And it was so good to hear that I had allowed the channeling of healing energy to be there for him, and that it had made a huge difference to the way that he passed. And I think that put a real kind of truth in my mind about this thing about not asking. You know, don't ever ask for what you think is needed, because some people certainly, I know, get totally healed of cancer. But this case for me was a good example of being able to let go completely to the divine, to the energy, to the frequency, to the power that was outside of me, that was coming through me, and let it do what it was meant to do. And that set a precedence for me in all the healings I ever did, because I didn't ask for what I thought they should receive. I was not that presumptuous, and I'm glad about that. I still work the same way. So this is about being a wholly free channel that doesn't have any ideas about how it's going to happen. And the other thing about with this healing energy, you don't know how long sessions, you know, you may do 2 sessions, you may do 1 session. I mean, I've been in situations where 1 session has shocked me that somebody has got complete recovery from something. And I'm going to tell you about 2 or 3 of my personal experiences here so that you get what can happen here. And this was when I was doing a demonstration. I'd been healing for quite a while, and I was asked to do a demonstration at a spiritual group on healing. So I did this demonstration, and the person that I was working on said they felt really good. They could feel the energy as well. A lot of people can feel a difference when the energy connects. And they really have a spiritual experience at the time when you're channeling the energy. And after the session, I discussed everything and answered all the questions. And then this man came up to me and he said to me, I'm really skeptical. He said, I don't know about this. He said, that person probably was trying to please you when they said they could feel it happening. And I thought, oh no, it's one of those people who's going to test you, you know. And it's like I was packing up my bag, putting away my couch and everything. And he said, look, he said, I've got this leg and I've not been out of pain. And I think it was for something like, oh God, it must have been 4 or 5 years. He'd had this pain in his leg. So he was always like miserable and never felt that it was ever going to go away. He never explained to me the condition or anything. And I thought, oh God, do I just carry on packing up? That would have been the easy thing to do. You know, I don't want to be tested here. There was now people gathering round because he had rather a loud voice. So there's people gathering round the two of us. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust that energy is going to come through for me. And I sat him down. He had to sit down on this stool that we happened to be close by. And I just knelt down on the floor and I started putting my hands. And I just said to the divine, I just did this quietly in my head, closed my eyes, and I said, please show this man the power of the energy that is within us, beyond us, all around us. And I put my hands around that man's leg, not touching him, and I just held it there for possibly 7 or 8 minutes, working on this part of his leg, just holding the energy, holding myself open for the divine to do what it needed to do. And he, you know, I opened my eyes and I said, so how are you feeling? And he had this amazing smile on his face and he said, that's the first time I felt pain-free in all these years. Say no more. I never carried on the conversation with him. I smiled back, picked up the rest of my things and left. But that's the sort of thing that if you really trust can happen, because I knew myself that what happened there was what Matthew Manning said. If you believe you can do this and it's possible, and that man pushed me into that state. You know, because I thought, well, I'm going to have to surrender everything here. There ain't nothing to do with ego in this bit. This is like total surrender, and let's see whether we can do this for him. And the divine came through. But also my channel was exceptionally open and I was surrendered to an exceptional state. The same thing happened for me, and I'm going to tell you this story of my daughter who... nobody in my family ever wore glasses until they got really old and used reading glasses. So I never had a family with glasses. But my daughter, when she was about 5 and going to school first, they were testing eyes and she needed glasses. And I took her to the optician and he tested her eyes and he gave her glasses. And these were those awful glasses that you get from the National Health in England. And she was the odd one out with glasses, you know. And she felt quite excited about it. But I knew what was going to happen when she went to school, you know, getting more into the older ages where they start teasing you if the slightest thing's different, and young children with glasses get teased. So I was concerned about this. But when I talked to the optician, he said, look, she has something wrong with her eyes. He'd done many tests by that time. And he said, this is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse, if anything. And I just looked at him and I said, it is not. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to work with her and I'll bring her back when I've done some healing and you can test them again. So we went home, and each night, and she loved this. I mean, she's in her 40s now, early 40s. And I started doing laying out of her hands healing after she was put to bed. So she loved me to be reading. So I'd read to her as normal. And then I would just sit there for 20 minutes with my hands over her eyes, channeling in the energy, 20 minutes every night. And she used to go to sleep, which was the great thing. So I didn't mind doing it, and she certainly didn't mind me doing it. Anyway, after a couple of months, she didn't seem to be picking those glasses up and wearing them. And by about the third or fourth month, she wasn't wearing them at all. And I thought, well, I've no idea. I'm not an optician. Nobody from the school was saying anything. So I took her back to the opticians. And he said, well, she's not really ready for a checkup. And I said, I'd just like you to test her eyes. And he had forgotten what I'd said to him. You know, I was just one of many people who went to the opticians. And he tested her eyes and he said, I don't understand. He said, because it's not there anymore. There's no problem with her eyes now. And he said, so what's happened? And I just explained to him what I'd been doing. And he just sort of stood there in amazement. He looked as if I must be lying. He didn't go any further. Like I've had other people where this sort of things happened and they want to know more. And that gets them into the higher frequencies of energy in their lives. But he wasn't that sort of person. But he was certainly shocked. And my daughter never had eye problems. She got checked regularly at school. They do it all throughout your school. And I used to say to her, have you had one recently? And she'd say, oh, yeah, we had one last year. I remember my eyes were fine. Nothing ever happened. She's now 42, I think. And she doesn't wear glasses. She has no eyesight problems. So what you're told and what is possible is kind of crazy, isn't it? And maybe I'll leave you there with this energy of what we're talking about, because I could tell you quickly about another experience, but I think I'm going to save it for another time, which was totally out of the blue, but was something that happened where I spontaneously walked towards somebody who'd collapsed. And I'm going to tell you that on another video when we get into deeper levels of what is possible when you start to understand that above and beyond anything else, you are a frequency of energy, and that it's up to you to keep your energy as high as you can by being free of any of the chemicals, pollutants, additives, negative energies, negative emotions, negative feelings, in order to channel the highest, purest energy so that you can actually give that to other people. So on that note, I'm going to leave it here. And thank you for allowing me into your sacred space today and spending some time listening to what I have to say about my journey through the life of my frequency. And hopefully you'll feel like you would like to give us a thumbs up here, and also subscribe, because I'm going to be giving more and more videos on all the different aspects of our energy and what we can use it for and how it affects us and others. So thank you again.